So I'm here to talk to you about education. For the past 14 years, that's what I've done. That's what I live and breathe. My wife's a teacher. I've got a sister-in-law that's in education. It's just who I am. So our dinner parties are a lot of fun. And education is one of those things that everybody has an opinion on because we all have gone through it. We've all been in school. So therefore, we're all experts on it. And there's a narrative right now that education is broken. Whether we're talking about public education, private education, there's a narrative in our country that it is broken. And I have to think, well, why do people think it's broken? And oftentimes they cite studies and test scores. There's international communities that put out things. There's a PISA report, which is just one of the 40,000 acronyms that educators like to use that nobody understands, including us. And the United States is not near the top of those rankings. And people start freaking out. We need to catch up to China. We need to be up there with the Finns with our reading and our math scores. And that's the narrative that we are constantly bombarded with. Our kids can't cut it internationally. And so we want to come up with a solution. Of course, we see a problem, we want to come up with a solution. So what are some of those solutions? Well, currently, the narrative in public education is the solution to this is to increase standardization, to increase accountability measures. That if we just hold teachers accountable, well, then our kids are going to be better. If we just standardize and take things to scale, well, then we're going to compete with these Finns and the Chinese. And that's all well and good. But what's interesting is none of that's really worked out because we have this push with Common Core. Perhaps you've heard of it. And you giggle, but I live it. So Common Core has been one of these initiatives. And the heart of Common Core is this phrase that we hear ad nauseum within the education world, which is we want all kids to be college and career ready. Now, as we stand back as a parent myself, I think, well, yeah, this makes sense. I want my kids held to a high standard. I want my sons to graduate and go on to college or a career. But I'm gonna break something to you. We actually don't mean college and career ready. We actually mean college ready because we obsess over scores. We shut down vocational programs. Enrichment programs are reduced because we're constantly consumed with increasing our math and our reading scores. And what's very interesting about this is this whole notion of college and career ready. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to sit in a room with an organization that's known as the Business Council. And if you're not familiar, this is a group of people, all CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Everybody in that room made more in a day than I will likely make in a career as a public school teacher. And they were having conversations about what kind of employees are they looking for? What kind of worker are they looking for? And I'm sitting at a table with, at the time, the head of the New York Public School Systems, who John King, Secretary King is now the Secretary of Education of the Department of Education. He's like the boss of my boss's boss's bosses all the way up to Washington, D.C. And at the current CEO of Chicago Public Schools and me. And I was kind of sitting there going, one of these doesn't belong. But we were having conversations with these CEOs, Dow Chemical, Amazon, Michael Dell. And you know what? They didn't say they're looking for kids that are really good on ACT. They're not looking for compliant little people that are very standardized. None of them said that. But what they did say is, we want kids that come out of high school and college that can be creative, that can be innovative and collaborative, and can fail and rebound from that and cause our companies and our industries to evolve and change. Which flies in the face of everything that these policymakers are saying with education is going to fix us. Giving another standardized test to a child is not going to revolutionize any industry in this country or this world. And yet, that's where we are going. I even have friends who have gone to Finland and China, these quote unquote top tier school systems. And you know what some of them are telling? They want their schools to be more creative and innovative and less standardized and less test focused. So clearly there's a disconnect here. And so what is the solution? Well, I will tell you one thing that I believe firmly. A solution will never come from the top. I have yet to see a superintendent of schools from a state or the country, or even a superintendent of a school district, come up with a solution that has had the same lasting impact on the solution that's come from a classroom, from a kid, or from a classroom teacher. And that is where I believe we can change the narrative of what's going on in our schools and tell people, you know what? We're not broken. And so I want to share with you something that we did in our school, Lincoln Junior High, just down the road. Exactly. About 5 or 6 years ago, we had a faculty meeting and we watched a TED Talk from Dan Pink. Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive. And his book is all about motivation. How do we motivate people? Now, his book was clearly written for business people. And he describes motivating humans, and even though in the junior high world sometimes our kids don't act very human-like, we still assume that we put them in that same broader category of human. Therefore, the motivational principles he's talking about should apply to our students. And the thing he discusses is he says, a lot of times people think if we just pay people more, they're gonna produce more, work better, harder, all of those things. But actually the research says that's not true at all. If you're asking people to do very menial tasks, low cognitive tasks, incentives might work. Compliant tasks, incentives might work. But if you're asking people to be truly creative, innovative, and productive, incentives actually have a negative impact. And so, well then what is gonna motivate people? What is gonna motivate? And he said, it comes down to autonomy and choice. Providing employees the ability to be autonomous in their work and choose what they work on. And so we had this conversation in our building, and a great colleague of mine, Matt Langus, he came up with the idea of Innovation Day, which I then took and expanded it to our entire grade level of 6th grade. And Innovation Day was pretty radical. We basically told kids, junior high kids, all right guys, a couple weeks from now we're gonna have this day. You're gonna be able to learn about anything you want. Now in the junior high brain, that takes a minute to process. They kind of stare at us awkwardly like, wait a minute, what? Anything? Anything. We gave them 3 requirements. You must learn something, you must create something, and you must share something. And that was it. It was built on their passion, what they were interested in. And so I want to share with you some of the things that came out of this over the years. We've done this for 6 years. In year 7, we're going to expand it. So I always love the gentleman on the left here, the young man, who, now the kids have to submit a proposal to the teachers and we have to approve them because, we do have rules and safety. And this young man put together a proposal to build a Tesla coil. Now, for those of you that know what a Tesla coil is, there is no way I should have ever approved that project. Because one of the glaring things on his project proposal was he was gonna bring a soldering iron from home. That should have been my red flag. But we went with it anyway. And he may or may not have electrocuted himself, but to me that was success. It worked, okay? Or the other young man, one of the other byproducts of this type of day is the sharing component. We attached it to our open house so that parents, grandparents, community can come and see what these kids spent an entire day creating. And the young man on the bottom right, he created what is known as elephant toothpaste. I had no idea what that was. It's a series of chemicals that are mixed and it causes an endothermic reaction. It makes foam. And you think to yourself, well, that's kind of silly. But when that boy, who's typically not the focus of any sort of positive attention in a classroom, is sitting there at an open house and having 30 people watch him describe what he did and the joy and pride on his face, that's why I do what I do. Or the girl up on the right, as teachers, every so often you get a kid and by about October, you think, I think this child is smarter than me. And I've got the next 6 months to try to trick him that it's the other I am. And this young lady designed a project, and I was watching her set it up because I honestly hadn't read her proposal. I wasn't sure what she was doing. She had 2-liter bottles. She cut the ends out, kind of cored them, put them together. She had all these little cars that she had created and made, had a scale and a blow dryer. And I have no idea what she was doing. So I asked her, I said, what are you doing? She goes, I made a wind tunnel. And I have a little string that I'm attaching to each of these cars. I'm tying it to the scale, and then I'm blowing wind across them, and I'm seeing how much drag each car is creating to discuss the principles of aerodynamics. And I kind of went, Nice work. I'll see you later tonight. I got nothing to tell you. I mean, what can I do? And now some of you are sitting there thinking, oh, is this another one of those STEM things? Is that, we're filling out buzzword bingo, STEM, there, top right. It's not. Because I could have also put a picture of the very first year when I had the young man who was learning how to play the guitar. And so he spent his entire day composing a solo on his guitar. And at the end of the day, he put on his first concert for 300 people. That's not a bad first gig. It may have gone straight to his head, but that was okay because he was interested in it. Or the young lady who wanted to do interpretive dance and performed a ballet routine for us that she spent all day working on. And we have the sports enthusiasts who are creating how-to videos, how to do a slap shot, how to curve a ball on a corner kick into the net, and documenting every aspect of it. We had the technology, kids composing music on iPads and Chromebooks, doing stop motion film. Anything you could imagine, we have seen over the past 6 years. And it was phenomenal. And I always get pushback and think, all right, this can't work. What are the barriers? Surely 300 junior high kids, they were probably wild animals all day. And the reality is they weren't. We never have behavior problems on this day. Why? Because kids are invested, because it's something they're interested in. And the sad reality of that is a lot of the projects that kids engage in are from topics that we would never actually address in our schools, which is a problem. The other barrier I get is, well, administrators will never buy into this. It seems a little sketchy. And it's not Common Core aligned. Are you grading it? And the answer is no, we never grade anything. We give them feedback. How can you grade a child's passion? And Common Core, I'm here to tell you, I can tie anything to Common Core. I could do it right now. Tying your shoes, I could do it, okay? It's research, it's analysis, we're good, move on, okay? So it can be done. And then I always get asked, okay, this sounds great, but what about the bigger picture? What's the lasting impact here that this has on kids and on teachers? And there is, because I have helped schools across the country and beyond create innovation days of themselves. It has really taken a hold. I had a school up in Canada that did an innovation week. Think about the genius and the creation if you gave kids a week. I have seen it from all the way from 6-year-olds in kindergarten all the way to seniors in high school perform these days. It has expanded because what it forces people to start thinking about, because we can't have just kids say, hey, you can be innovative next Thursday. That's Innovation Day, but go back to being non-innovative on Friday and the rest of the year. That's counterintuitive. So it started shifting pedagogy, which is the way we think about how we teach, and saying, you know what, maybe we need to infuse more choice and more autonomy in what our kids do every day. Instead of telling them exactly what to learn, when to learn, and how to learn it, because that's not how humans learn, all right? And as a side note, I always found it funny when Dan Pink himself, who really started this notion for us, calls me and says, hey, do you mind talking to my son's principal to get an innovation day going? I said, I would be happy to. I had a student many, many years ago, and I recently caught up with her parents, and I said, hey, am I full of it? All the stuff I did when your daughter was with me in 6th grade, did it do anything? You know, Innovation Day, this autonomous learning. And they were very clear, mom and dad, saying, yeah, because it gave their child confidence that they could try things, that they could work independently, that their learning didn't have to be restricted to what was on a curriculum map or on the board for the daily objectives, that they could learn, because that's what this is all about, okay? And so people ask me, well, how can I do this? And then I shamelessly plug my website and say, go to my website, because I have a toolkit there that you can. Because this isn't just restricted to education. There are companies like Google and FedEx that do this with their employees. They give their employees time to say, be creative, be innovative. And when companies do this, the research shows, and Dan Pink will mention this, that the most productive, innovative, creative changes and improvements for companies are actually coming out of this time. There's something there, and it's something really, really valuable. And when I boil it all down, is why I do this. It's for the kids. Because if you've ever talked to a young child, they love learning. But we've lost focus of learning in trying to educate children, because there's a difference. We've become very good at educating kids, but we have killed the love of learning. My sons, to a point of annoyance, were always asking questions when they were this tall. You know these children. Dad, why does that happen? What is that? When are we? And it's constant questions because they thirst for learning. But when they get to school, we replace those passions and those curiosities with, this is what you must learn. This is how you must learn it, and this is when you are going to learn it. So things like Innovation Day and things like giving kids agency over their learning and autonomy is how we can fix this supposed broken education system. But the reality is it's not broken, because things like this exist, and we have kids being brought back to learning should be joyous, learning should be built around creativity and innovation, because that is truly creating students that are ready for the world that they will be living in. So I thank you very much for your attention and your time today.